A wedding happens once. My family chose my sister's celebration over my husband's funeral. I buried him alone and kept his will. Now, they face the consequences. A wedding happens just once in existence. Death ceremonies can be delayed. My relative scoffed as she swept by me that evening before. Her statement pierced me like shattered crystal. And the most painful reality, she wasn't alone in this thinking. Hello viewers, I'm AAR Monroe. And when I laid my spouse to rest, the person who embraced me during life's harshest moments, my whole family attended my sister's celebration instead. No parent present, not my closest companion, not one sibling. I recall standing at those chapel entrance doors, gazing at vacant benches, my fingers shaking against the frigid timber of the casket. The quietness felt overwhelming, interrupted solely by the minister's words and gusts rattling the colored glass panels. Within, I kept repeating, perhaps they'll arrive. Perhaps someone will enter tardily, but remorseful. Yet every moment ticked by like a harsh reminder that I stood isolated, completely and intentionally deserted. While they lowered the coffin, consuming his final remains, I clutched the creased memorial pamphlet until it split in my grasp. Moisture clouded my sight, yet my frame refused to break down. I needed to remain upright, since no one would support me. That's when my device illuminated. One notification glowing on the dark display. We must speak immediately. Then 36 unanswered attempts. Her timing felt ruthless. Her non-attendance screamed louder than storms. In that instant, something within me transformed. Sorrow and treachery merged, igniting something frigid, keen, and inflexible. I gazed at the opening in the soil, then at the device in my palm. A harsh contradiction surrounded me like vapor. While I interred devotion, they toasted bubbles and jewels. And as soil started covering the coffin, I murmured one quiet promise into the frozen atmosphere. They selected their position, and shortly they would discover what losing everything they valued meant. I refused those attempts. Not one response. My device vibrated and quivered in my hand like it carried spirits, the trembling resonating against the gravesite's emptiness. I tucked it into my bag and allowed it to suffocate in quietness. The interment concluded with courteous sympathies from unknown faces, neighbors, several of his colleagues, people I barely recognized. They provided me empty phrases, lightly patted my shoulder, then departed to their vehicles. No relatives, no familiar comfort, just figures abandoning me behind. When the final shovel of soil struck the grave, I remained motionless. My limbs wanted to crumble, but my spirit had already shattered hours earlier. That's when reality hit me like electricity. I possessed no one, at least not within the family claiming to cherish me. I walked toward my vehicle, the world surrounding me hazy with mourning and shock. The joy from across town at the celebration seemed to penetrate my core like venom. I could nearly hear my sister's laughter, my mother's pleased tone, my father's speech. They hadn't simply missed my spouse's service. They had selected her festivity over my devastation. Sitting in the driver's position, I finally accessed my device. The notification stared back. We must speak immediately. Contact me now. This isn't your assumption. Answer. Then one from my closest friend. Apologies, I couldn't miss it. You comprehend, correct? Comprehend? My chest ached. How could I grasp that those who should have supported me upright during life's darkest moment were raising glasses beneath twinkling lights instead? I reclined against the headrest, staring toward the cloudy sky. Betrayal's weight pressed harder than grief, and beneath everything, quiet fury started blooming. I whispered into the car's silence, more to myself than anyone. If this ever occurred to you, comment same below. Because internally, I knew I wasn't alone in being abandoned when it mattered supremely. But unlike others, I wouldn't allow it ending there. I would nurture the silence. Let them worry over my unanswered attempts. Let them perspire in their elegant gowns and formal wear, wondering why I hadn't responded. I wouldn't pursue them. I would wait. And when they approached me desperately, because they would, I'd be prepared with something colder than grief. A strategy. The following morning, my doorbell chimed. Not once, Not twice, but repeatedly until the noise carved into my mind. Opening it revealed her, my mother, wearing identical silk attire from my sister's celebration. I could still detect perfume, champagne, and festivity clinging to her. Her hair was styled flawlessly, as though grief hadn't affected her whatsoever. "We must discuss this," she stated, voice sharp, practiced, almost professional. I remained still. I simply observed her, my hand gripping the door's edge like it was my only support. "You missed his service," I whispered. My voice fractured. She blinked, irritated. "Darling, it was unfortunate scheduling. Your sister's celebration was significant, a singular occurrence. You'll comprehend someday." I released a harsh laugh, low and cutting. "Significant? You're informing me champagne and dessert outweighed burying the man who treated me better than this entire family ever did." Her expression hardened. "Don't be theatrical. Life continues forward. Dwelling on death won't alter anything." My heart dropped. The woman who birthed me couldn't even meet my gaze while dismissing my loss. Yet behind her words, I detected something else. Not guilt, but terror. Then she spoke it. The phrase that twisted my grief into something more dangerous. Listen carefully. We need to resolve certain matters now that he's departed. You have obligations and, frankly, certain possessions shouldn't remain in your control alone." Her eyes darted past me, examining my home's hallway. She wasn't here for me. She wasn't here for him. She was here for what remained behind. My nails pressed into the door's wood. The silence between us stretched like wire pulled excessively tight. Finally, I stepped backward and opened the door wider. "Enter, Mom," I said, voice steady. "Now then." She exhaled with relief, mistaking my composure for submission. But internally, I was already steps ahead. Because if she believed I would surrender and let them take from me after abandoning me, then she didn't know the daughter she had raised. This was no longer about grief. It was about retribution. The living space still carried faint lily scents from funeral displays, their petals already starting to wilt. My mother positioned herself on the couch's edge, her dress rustling as she crossed her legs, behaving as though this were a business appointment. She began, her tone clipped. "You're young. You don't comprehend how society operates. Your spouse, may he rest peacefully, left behind possessions, the residence, the funds, even his business portions. It isn't prudent for you to manage all that independently. Your father, and I believe it's wise if everything gets redistributed." The word struck me. Redistributed. I stared at her, watching her sip the water glass I had provided, like she was entitled to every drop in my home. "Redistributed to whom?" I asked, though I already understood. "To your sister, naturally. She's beginning her new existence with her partner. She'll require support. And well, you'll be fine. You're resilient." Resilient. That term had always been their justification. Resilient meant I didn't need care, didn't deserve sympathy. Resilient meant they could strip me bare, and I'd stand smiling. But not this occasion. I leaned back in my chair, eyes never departing her face. "So you skipped my husband's service to celebrate her engagement. And now you've arrived here to request his legacy, too." She shifted uncomfortably, but her chin lifted defiantly. "Don't distort this. It's family obligation. Your sister deserves excellence. Don't be selfish." Selfish. Another blade. My fingers curved against the armrest, but my voice remained calm, almost excessively calm. "You believe I'm selfish because I won't surrender what my husband constructed with his own hands? You believe grief makes me weak." Her eyes narrowed. She believed she had me trapped. She mistook my stillness for uncertainty. But inside me, something cold was forming. Their betrayal at the service had already severed something delicate inside me. And now her greed was hammering the final spike into the coffin of whatever connection remained between us. I rose from my seat slowly, every movement intentional. "I'll consider it," I said, my tone polite, even warm. Her face brightened instantly, relief washing over her. She touched my arm lightly as she stood. "Good girl. I knew you'd see reason." I walked her to the door, watching her leave with a self-satisfied smile. The second the door clicked shut, I whispered into the silence. Not a possibility. They had chosen to abandon me at my darkest hour. Now I would show them what abandonment truly meant. The moment my mother's car departed, I sat at the dining table and let the silence settle. My husband's photograph stared back from the mantel, his steady gaze, his smile frozen in time. I won't let them erase you, I whispered. Not like this. Grief might have shattered me, but betrayal sharpened me. And if my family believed they could strip me of what little remained, they were about to encounter a different version of me. That evening, I retrieved the security box my husband always maintained in the study. Inside were neatly arranged documents, the will, the deed, the business contracts. He had left everything to me. Everything. Not a single line mentioned my family. It was all mine, his final act of trust. But trust came with responsibility, and I wouldn't let his sacrifice fall into greedy hands. The next morning, I made my first call. Not to my mother, not to my sister, but to our family attorney, Mr. Daniels. His voice was calm, deliberate, and just slightly surprised when I explained what had occurred. Isla, he said, your husband was clear in his instructions. No one can contest this easily, but if your family attempts, you'll need to be prepared. Prepared? That word rang in my ears like a bell. I met with him the following day, the documents neatly tucked in my bag. As we reviewed every clause, every signature, a plan began forming. Quiet, precise. I wouldn't confront them with anger. I'd let the law itself be my shield. Meanwhile, my phone kept buzzing. Texts, missed calls, even voicemails. My father's voice dripped with authority. You're being childish. Call your mother back. My sister's messages were smug. Don't make this harder than it has to be. You'll thank us one day. But the one that chilled me came late at night from an unknown number. Sign the papers, or you'll regret it. I stared at that message until the screen dimmed, my pulse steadying instead of racing. They thought fear would bend me. But fear had burned out of me the moment I stood alone at my husband's grave. I wasn't afraid anymore. If they wanted war, they would get it. But it wouldn't be loud or messy. My revenge would be silent, and it would leave them with nothing but regret. It was a Sunday evening when they arrived. All of them. My mother, my father, my sister with her glittering new ring, and even my so-called best friend trailing behind like a shadow. They didn't knock gently. They pounded. The kind of pounding that wasn't a request but a demand. When I opened the door, the air shifted. My mother walked in first, eyes sweeping the house like it already belonged to her. My father followed, his jaw clenched, his presence heavy. My sister smiled, a sharp, satisfied smile, and sat down without invitation. Ira, my father began. This has gone far enough. You've ignored our calls, our messages. You're acting irrational. We're here to settle this now. I stood near the window, the fading light casting shadows across the room. Settle what? My voice was steady, almost casual. The assets. My mother snapped. Your sister deserves her share. She's starting her life. You don't need all of this, and holding on to it makes you look bitter. Bitter. That word stung, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I let the silence hang heavy until it made them restless. Finally, my sister leaned forward, her tone syrupy and cruel. Come on, he's gone. You don't need all these things to remember him. Let's take care of it. I met her eyes. You want me to give up everything my husband built? Everything he trusted me with? She smirked. You make it sound ugly. We just want what's fair. Fair? The word twisted in my chest like a blade. Where was fairness when I stood alone at his grave? Where was fairness when they chose champagne over condolences? I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I simply walked to the mantel, lifted my husband's framed photo, and held it to my chest. Then I turned to them and said softly, You left me alone when I needed you most. You abandoned him when he deserved your respect. And now you'll learn what abandonment feels like. Their faces shifted. Confusion, then irritation, then something almost like fear. But I didn't give them answers. Not yet. Instead, I opened the door wide and gestured toward it. Leave. No. The next time we talk, it won't be here. It'll be in a place where truth is written in ink and sealed with law. My father's voice thundered. Don't test us, Ella. I met his stare, my grip tightening on the photo. I already have. They left in silence, slamming the door behind them. And in that silence, I allowed myself the faintest smile. Because what they didn't know was that every document had already been fortified. Every move of theirs had already been anticipated. They thought they were circling me, but in reality, I had already built the cage. The letter went out the next morning. Thick cream paper embossed with the seal of Mr. Daniels' law office. One copy to my parents, one to my sister, one even to my so-called best friend, whose betrayal still stung like salt in an open wound. It was simple, direct, and devastating. Notice of estate distribution. Every line of my husband's will laid bare. The house, the savings, the shares, all left solely to me. His explicit words were crystal clear, impossible to contest without exposing themselves as greedy opportunists. By noon, the storm began. My phone buzzed endlessly. Furious messages, desperate voicemails. My father's voice was thick with rage. How dare you humiliate this family with lawyers? We could have handled this privately. My mother wept into the phone, her tears as performative as ever. You don't understand what you're doing. You're tearing us apart. And my sister. Oh, her words were poison wrapped in sugar. You'll regret this when you have no one left. Don't come crawling back. Enjoy your empty house. I listened to each message in silence. Not replying, not defending, just letting their desperation echo back at them like a mirror. By midweek, things escalated. My mother showed up at the lawyer's office, causing a scene so loud the secretary later described it to me in hushed tones like a scandal. My father tried to intimidate Mr. Daniels with threats of family honor. My sister flaunted her fiancé's family wealth as if it could tip the scales of justice. But it didn't matter. Every time they lunged, they collided with the unshakable truth of the will. My husband had given me everything legally, permanently, untouchably. And here's the poetic part. With every move they made, they revealed themselves to neighbors, to friends, to the same community that had once admired them. Their obsession with my inheritance spread like wildfire, whispers tarnishing their perfect image. Meanwhile, I remained silent, composed, presenting myself not as the bitter widow they painted, but as the wronged daughter standing her ground with dignity. The silence wasn't weakness, it was my weapon. And as their reputations crumbled, as their desperation grew louder, I realized something beautiful. They had already lost. They just didn't know how completely. Not yet. The breaking point came at my sister's wedding rehearsal dinner. I hadn't been invited, of course, but news travels fast in our town. Whispers found their way to me. The caterer pulling out, the florist canceling, the venue demanding payment up front because the family's reputation had soured. And then, the cruelest irony, the engagement funds my parents had promised her, frozen, because the savings they planned to redistribute were mine, locked tightly in accounts they could no longer touch. That night, while fairy lights dimmed over a rehearsal stripped bare, my phone lit up again. Not with threats, not with anger, but with a single trembling voice. My mother. Please, she whispered, her breath shaky. They're all looking at us differently now. We need your help. I sat at my kitchen table, the will spread out before me, my husband's signature steady and strong. For a moment, I closed my eyes and let the silence wash over me, remembering the grave, the empty pews, the casket lowered without them. And then I smiled, a calm, deliberate smile. I needed you once, too, Mom, I said softly. And you chose champagne over compassion. Now you'll learn what that choice costs. Her sob cracked through the phone, but I didn't linger. I ended the call with the same quiet finality they had given me on the day of the funeral. Days later, the wedding went on, but stripped, humbled, a shell of the grand affair they had envisioned. Guests murmured about the missing luxuries, about the whispers of greed. And my sister in her gown wore not pride, but shame. As for me, I didn't show up. I spent that day at the cemetery laying fresh lilies at my husband's grave. I told him everything. How silence had been my blade. How dignity had been my armor. How betrayal had undone itself without me ever needing to scream. The wind moved through the trees gently, as though he was listening. And I knew then with a certainty that filled every vein in my body. They had abandoned me, but I had buried them too. Not in earth, not in stone, but in the truth of their own choices. And nothing, no apology, no regret, could unearth them now.